Morning.
Morning.
I wonder if anybody forgot to set their clocks.
Think so?
These day and times, they,
That's true, they automatically do it, yeah. Right. If I'm being honest, I didn't even know that it was time to do that until last night.
Really? Serious? How old are you?
That's what honest means.
I wouldn't have if I hadn't seen it on the news.
Yeah, I was completely oblivious to it. Yeah, so I'm thankful that things do it by them on their own, I suppose. Huh?
I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, see?
We'll see. I'm not the ultimate.
All right. Ezekiel chapter number 43. We're getting towards the end, aren't we? Okay, let me back up one little thing here. So, talking about the temple, and just want to remind us that we're not. I'm not teaching the literal view of this because I don't think that's what's going on there, and so that's why I'm not teaching that. I don't think this temple was ever meant to be actually built. And here are some reminding us of some reasons why, because we have all these measurements and details and whatnot, but we don't know. God didn't tell us a lot about what to build what to build it out of, and there's some measurements that are missing, and so all of this is leads me and maybe you, if you've reasoned it with it in your brain, that this is more of a message about holiness and restoration to the people as they're still in captivity, looking forward to coming home. Okay. So now we're going to get into 43. So we're in the middle of this Ezekiel's vision, being brought here, there, and everywhere, and shown all of these things. And the he there in verse 1 of 43 is the what did we call him? We called him the heavenly tour guide. That's right, the tour guide. So he has this vision, and he sees this guy. He's got a 10 and a half or 11 foot tall rod that he's measuring with. He's a tour guide. So let's see. Let's read the first 6 verses. It says, "Afterward, he brought me to the gate." So after he was shown and that they measured the inner temple. After that, he brought me to the gate that faces toward the east. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east. So try to picture what he's saying. His voice was like the sound of many waters, and the earth shone with his glory. It was like the appearance of the vision which I saw, like the vision which I saw when I came to destroy the city. The visions were like the vision which I saw by the river Kibar, and I fell on my face. Verse 4, the glory of the Lord came into the temple by way of the gate which faces toward the east. The Spirit lifted me up and brought me out into the inner court, and behold, the glory of the Lord filled the temple. Then I heard him speaking to me from the temple while a man stood beside me. Okay. All right, so he's shown the temple 40 through 42. And now he's brought to the east gate, and he's viewing God's arrival. I wanted him to see God coming to the temple. And as he looked, he noticed God looked like what Ezekiel saw in chapter 1 and chapter number 8, or 8 through 11. So you remember that vision? Remember starting this book and the amazing vision. We call it God's chariot. This amazing, crazy vision. And so he says the whole earth shone with his glory. He's calling it God's glory. The whole thing that he sees, he calls it God's glory. And so it's very, very bright and very, very loud. And so I imagine maybe not quite looking at the sun, or imagine looking at the sun, which you're not supposed to do, by the way, kids, and also right next to a humongous waterfall. So it's very bright and very loud. Right? If you can picture what that would be, kind of like almost like a sensory overload kind of thing. And of course, what he does at the end of verse 3 is when he's got this overload of God's glory, what does he do? He falls on his face to worship, right? And we see men doing this throughout the Bible when confronted with, some kind of huge, overwhelming divine image. Okay, now the east gate is important. The east gate is the same spot where he was brought in the vision of chapter 11. So 8 through 11 is when Ezekiel was taken to the temple by God, and he was shown the temple in Jerusalem and all the bad, corrupt things that were going on, saying, I'm leaving. God says, I'm leaving here because look at all the sin that's going on. So it was very, very, it was a bad vision, we would say. And the last thing that Ezekiel saw God doing in that vision was standing on a mountain on the east side of the city. So God had actually gone out of the east gate and goes up on this mountain. So he left. The idea was God left Jerusalem. He left the temple. He left the people. Now, the picture is what? God's basically coming down. He's coming from the east. So he's coming down from that mountain, so to speak, right? And he's coming back to the temple. And we talked a lot of this has to do with this restoration, not only restoring Israel to their homeland, but kind of restoring the relationship between God and the people. So God's coming back to the temple. This is a wonderful thing. So this is a good thing. And it's God's coming in. And if you read back through chapters 10 and 11, what Ezekiel saw God doing was in increments, God was moving further and further away from the temple until he got to this mountaintop. So he saw him at the threshold. Chapter 10, he sees God at the threshold of the temple. And then he saw God at the east gate. So, and then he sees God on this mountaintop outside the city. So in that vision, the bad vision, God's destroying the temple. His glory is leaving. God's like, boom, 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 I'm out of here. And now God's coming back in. That's what he sees. Okay. So Ezekiel, then he finds himself, let's see, verse 5, he finds himself in the inner court of the temple. And let me just show you. Can we get back to this? Yeah. Okay. So he finds himself in the, you got the outer court, and then you got the inner court. And he watches as this glory of God, this amazing image, and that he saw in chapter 1. So remember, this is what he's seeing in chapter 1. If you got to go back there and read that to get that, whatever your brain conjures up, what that is, then he sees this glory of God coming to fill the temple. And I think this is reminiscent of, I got a screen right in front of my face. I don't know what I'm looking back. It's reminiscent of God. So when Solomon built his temple, the actual physical temple, the one that got destroyed eventually, this is what God did. Solomon was dedicating the temple, and God is he comes down, he fills the temple, and he fills it so much, and it was that the priest, his glory, and I guess the word used there is smoke, but the priests couldn't even. They had to get out of the temple. They couldn't even be in the temple because God's presence was so, I would say overwhelming. All right, so now You got the image in your head of what he just saw? Okay. Now, anything that I'm leaving out, or I can't describe I'm not going to describe every word or every little thing in here. So you just speak up, and we'll try to make some sense of it. Okay. So 7 through 9. I heard him speaking. Verse 6 says, I heard him speaking to me from the temple. And he said to me, verse 7, Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. Note that word. No more shall the house of Israel defile my holy name, they nor their kings by their harlotry or with the carcasses of their kings on their high places. When they set their threshold by my threshold and their doorpost by my doorpost with a wall between them and me, that's not good. They defiled my holy name by the abominations which they committed. Therefore I have consumed them in my anger. Now let them put their harlotry and the carcasses of their kings far away from me, and I will dwell in their midst forever. So what God does in these 3 verses, he makes 2 announcements. The first, this is the first one. 7 through 9 is the first announcement. He's going to make another announcement. Let's see, 10, 11, and 12. Okay. But in 7, 8, 9, you get a positive, and you get a negative, and you get a positive. So verse 7, God says, I'm going to dwell with you. I'm going to dwell with my people again, and my people are no longer going to defile my name. That's good. Verse 8 is a reminder of their sins and a reminder of the punishment. Not so good. Up, down, and then back up is a call. Verse 9 is a call to faithfulness. And so for verse 7 to be a reality for the people, verse 9 was the condition that needed to be met. See that? Now, when God says, this is the place of my throne, verse 7, this is the place of my throne. We could go back and forth and say, well, is that, what place is this? Is he talking about the most holy place? Is he talking about the most holy place, which would be that, I wish I had a little pointer word work, but the most holy place would be the most center. The very center is the altar, and then right behind the altar to the west would be the most holy place. Is he talking about that? Is that where God says his throne is? Or is it the whole temple? Or is it the whole city of Jerusalem? Or is he talking about the people as a whole? From Israel, they're going to be my throne. I guess we could argue back and forth about this, but to go harp on one or the other, I think would really be to miss the overall point. Maybe it's the city. Jeremiah, chapter 3, seems to point us that his throne is the city. Maybe he's talking about the temple itself. I don't think it really matters. I think the message is that God's going to be there with them. That's the overall message. So we don't want to miss that point. God's former throne, we go back to the law of Moses, was the mercy seat that sat on top of the Ark of the Covenant. You remember the mercy seat? So you have the Ark, but then the mercy seat, the lid, right? With the 2 cherubs with their wings would have arched like that and pointed toward each other. I should have got a picture of it. Y'all seen it before. Well, that was where he said, that's where I'm going to come and I'm going to commune with the high priest, and that's going to be my throne. But you know what is not mentioned here is the ark, right? There's no ark mentioned. Where is it? Where did it go? Huh? It's on Oak Island. It's in the Indiana Jones. Yeah, he's looking for it. Are people looking for the ark today?
Yep.
Yeah, they're looking for the ark. Let me back up. If Let me read. I'm going to read Jeremiah chapter 3. Jeremiah had something to say about this ark of the covenant. Go back to Jeremiah 3. Remember, Jeremiah's preaching at the same time as Ezekiel. So a lot of the things that Jeremiah and Ezekiel say would parallel, and they overlap each other. All right, where are we at? Jeremiah 3 and verse 14. He says, return, O backsliding children, says the Lord, for I am married to you. I will take you, one from a city and two from a family. I will bring you to Zion. I will give you shepherds according to my heart, who will feed you with knowledge and understanding. All right, now watch this. Then it shall come to pass, when you are multiplied and increased in the land in those days, says the Lord, that they will say no more, the ark of the covenant of the Lord. It shall not come to mind, nor shall they remember it, nor shall they visit it, nor shall it be made any more. Well, that doesn't that say that it's gone, right? Jeremiah was looking forward to it. Now the temple hadn't been destroyed yet, and so we would assume that the ark is still in the temple at this time. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was. But doesn't that's obviously pointing to a time where the ark's not going to be there, and it looks like God wanted it that way. That God meant for the ark to be gone from the temple, and probably because it caused Israel problems. Like they started worshiping it instead of the God who was supposed to be sitting upon it, usually as his throne, kind of like the temple itself. You know, we would have often said that, you know, in Jesus' day, the Pharisees, they kind of held the temple up as like, as long as we got this temple, we're all good with God, right? And really in Isaiah's day as well, they had the temple and they think, well, nothing can happen to us because we got the temple, we're God's people, right? And so they started using all of these things as kind of like good luck charms. Certainly the Ark of the Covenant, I think, would fall into that category. Well, God said, you know what, they're not doing it. There's going to come a day when they're not even going to remember it. They're not even going to try to make that thing again. The ark is gone forever. Yeah, good.
I was kind of lucky for the children of Israel because when the Philistines stole it, didn't they get sick?
The Philistines got sick, yeah. You know, they did, because, yeah.
But, yeah, it's not supposed to be a thing to worship, but.
Yeah, right. I think they started worshiping. Well, at least they started looking at those things almost idol-like.
They repeatedly put God in a box, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. Put God in a box. All right, so Ezekiel's, there's nothing about the ark. Certainly no details about rebuilding the ark. And I wonder if folks today, when they say, if you don't know, let me repeat this too, that this temple right here is the one that's supposed to be rebuilt. Some say, those who believe that Jesus is coming back and he's going to establish a kingdom on earth and it's going to be in Jerusalem and all of this, and this is the temple that they're ready to build. They got a priesthood over there in Israel, and they're waiting. I wonder if they got plans to build the ark. They might not. Yeah, they got plans. I don't know. I would hope not. Because of what Jeremiah said. All right, but so just remember in this section of the book, the heavy figurative language, the metaphors that are being used in this section. Think about this city was or this temple, and God saying, I'm going to dwell there. It's going to be my throne. Was a city or a temple going to literally house the spiritual God of the entire universe, of all things that we know? What would that look like? It's almost like putting God in a box, sort of. Can you squeeze God in a box? Can you squeeze all that God is into this room? I don't even know how that makes sense. I can't even. It's almost dumb to think about. Did Ezekiel? So he says, "I'm. This is going to be my throne. This is the place of my throne." But what about Isaiah 66 and verse 1? Did Ezekiel forget that God through Isaiah said, "Heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool"? Well, great. Oh, which is it? Is heaven his throne, or is this city or this temple the throne? You have others like it, 1 Kings 8, Psalm 11. Go ahead.
It's really in his use of the word throne that we get caught up in. And the throne exemplifies where he will shine his glory. And that's the children of Israel.
Yeah.
He wants his glory to be shown to the world through his children.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of what Israel's being shown here. And I think verses like Isaiah, "Heaven is my throne and earth is my footstool." But then at the same time, God's saying, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be in your presence. I think verses like that in Psalm 11:4 were meant to warn Israel not to put too much emphasis on these human buildings and the things that they would construct with their own hands. Because God can't be contained in those things, right? Those things served a purpose. The ark served a purpose. The temple served a purpose. But they were never to forget that God is a whole lot greater than those things, right? So I mentioned the word forever being used. God's going to dwell there forever in this temple. There's another city that is described in Revelation, which John relies heavily on Ezekiel. And we're going to see that when we start going through that book. But Revelation 21 and Revelation 22, there's another city being described there. And Revelation 22 and verse 5, in so many words, God is said to dwell with his people forever. It actually says that God's going to be their light and they're going to reign forever and ever. The idea is that God's going to dwell with his people forever in that city. So, if Ezekiel's temple, if this is supposed to be taken literally, and this is what's going to happen in the future, is God going to dwell on earth in this temple forever? Or is he going to dwell forever with the people in that other city in Revelation 21, 22? Or is somehow those two things the same thing? Which I don't think anybody would say that they're the same. If you want to avoid, you see how confusing it can get? So which one is it? We can't just read Ezekiel and be like, this is the way it is, because there's other places that talk about some similar things. And they have to all harmonize. The Spirit who gave all of this is not a fool. All of these things have to make sense and they have to harmonize. So if we're going to avoid confusion about all this, the wording here in Ezekiel is meant to convey the message that God intends to have a permanent relationship, a permanent fellowship with his people again.
Maybe overstretching, but foreshadowing that the church starts there and forever, as long as forever is the earth existing, I guess. It started there, and that he, through his people, that's how he shows, like you said earlier, his glory. Since we are talking figuratively,
Yeah.
Instead of literally, because right now, every conversation I seem to be having with people is about supporting Israel, because that's literally going to be the place, and
Yeah.
even one guy said that, I think it was the 1400s, they bricked up the east gate so that God couldn't come through it, which is hilarious to me. It cracks me up to think about it.
Who bricked it up?
This some king back in the 1400s.
Oh, wow. So he's expecting God to come to the east gate. Yeah. He bricks it up.
Because I bricked it up, yeah.
That'll stop him.
I don't know, I may be overstretching, but it just feels like, as long as we're in the metaphorical and not literal.
Yeah, and I think the church is in view, but I gotta tell you, I don't know how much. I just don't know how much the church is in view. I think it is to a certain degree, and what makes me think that is how much revelation relies upon the things that Ezekiel's talking about. But I'm just not comfortable in telling you how much the church is in it. I think people can go too far with this, and I'm going to bring up something when we get to 44, where very early church writers, church commentators, and they saw Christ. They're matching everything up to everything in the church. And I just don't think that. I think we can go too far with that because we just don't know. A lot of speculation. Unbroken fellowship with his people. I think this is the idea here, that God's saying, here's my throne, I'm going to dwell with you. Now, the second announcement. Any more comments or questions? 10 through 12. Son of man, describe the temple to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern. Notice that reason, that they may be ashamed. And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the temple and its arrangements, its exits and its entrances, its entire design and all its ordinances, all its forms and all its laws. Write it down, which is what he did, in their sight, so that they may keep its whole design and all of its ordinances and perform them. This is the law of the temple. The whole area surrounding the mountaintop is most holy. Behold, this is the law of the temple. All right, now, God's second announcement. Ezekiel, you're going to describe all the details of the temple to the people. And the reason is that they may be ashamed. How? So this is like a blueprint of sorts. Not a complete blueprint, as we've already seen, but it's a blueprint. How would being shown a blueprint of a temple cause them to be ashamed? You would think that if God meant, here is the blueprint, I want you to literally build this. And you would think that people would be like, yes, we're going home and we have a new thing to build. It's going to be exciting. And yes, we will do this, Lord. And you're going to dwell there literally forever. This is going to be amazing. Right? That's what I would expect. How would being shown a blueprint of this beautiful, wonderful, glorious temple cause them to be ashamed? Don't you think that is that right there, that reason why the people need to see this so that they'll be ashamed? Don't you think that is telling us something about the message itself? It's not actually a literal temple. Well, it just doesn't make any sense. Not to me, anyways. I think what's going on, they need to see all of these details and how God is so concerned about being right and with his holiness, that they're going to see that we weren't the people that God wanted. We weren't the people that God wanted us to be. But he's given us, he's bringing us back. He's coming home with us. Cause them to be ashamed. Verse 12, you notice the temple, it says the whole mountaintop is a temple. That's telling me that the temple itself is encompassing this whole mountaintop. It's holy because God is there. And God was filling the temple, right? Ezekiel saw God's glory filling the temple. So that makes everything holy. The whole mountaintop is holy. The temple is on a mountaintop. Now, if we were to jump to chapter 45, that's going to tell us that the city of Jerusalem is completely separate from the temple. And so if the temple is supposed to be outside of the city and it's all up on this holy mountaintop all by itself, does that make sense? Literally? How's that going to work today? If we're going to try to build this, we think Jesus is coming. How are you going to? I thought the temple was inside of Jerusalem, but we're kind of getting the message, and I might be reading 45 wrong, but that the temple is separate and apart apart from the city, from the people. I think it only makes sense if it's all in a big metaphor that God is emphasizing his holiness. Holiness carries the idea of being set apart. It's set apart from the temple, from the people. There's a man named in the Bible named Zerubbabel. Who was that guy? Who is Zerubbabel? Go ahead. Zerubbabel. He became, when the people came home from captivity, he became the governor over the people. He is the one in Ezra, the book of Ezra, who rebuilt the temple. Right? Ezra came home and established the laws and reestablished the priesthood and things like that. Zerubbabel rebuilt the temple. You read about that in Ezra. Did he build the temple according to all these specific specifications? He didn't. He didn't do it. Why didn't he do it? Excuse me, Zerubbabel. It says, write it down on the side so that they may keep its whole design. Well, why didn't Zerubbabel do it? As far as we know, he was a good man. We really don't have anything negative about him. He did exactly what God wanted him to do, except rebuild this temple like he was supposed to. Do you think that he understood that Ezekiel's message was not to be taken literally? When the second temple was finished, all right, I might need some help in some readers here. Somebody grab maybe Tim. Can you get Zechariah 4:9-10, and maybe Jeff, can you get Haggai chapter 2 and verse 3? And I'm going to read Ezra 3:12. So I'm going to read Ezra 3:12. I just want you to see this view of how people thought about the temple that Zerubbabel built. Ezra 3:12, Zechariah 4:9-10, and then Haggai 2 and verse number 3. All right, let me get to Ezra real quick. I should be going the wrong way. So when the second temple was finished, it was being compared to the first temple, Solomon's temple. It wasn't being compared to Ezekiel's temple. They weren't saying, oh, we didn't build it like Ezekiel said to build it. So in chapter 3 of Ezra 12, says, but in verse 11 says, they praised the Lord because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. But many of the priests and Levites and heads of the fathers' houses, old men who had seen the first temple, not heard about Ezekiel's temple, they wept with a loud voice when the foundation of this temple was laid before their eyes. Many shouted for joy, some were weeping. And it's because they were comparing it to the first temple. They're like, oh, it's great, but it's not as good as it used to be. Okay, can you read Zechariah 4:9-10?
The hand of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this temple. His hand shall also finish it. Then you will know that the Lord of hosts has sent him to you. For who has despised the day of small things?
Okay, we'll stop right there. Who has despised the day of small things? The day of small things, they just rebuilt the temple. It's because that's how people were viewing it. It was not as great as the first. It was considered a day of small things. Haggai 2:3.
Who was left among you who saw this temple in its former glory? And how do you see it now in comparison with it? Is it not in your eyes as nothing?
In your eyes is nothing compared to the first temple. right? And so there was no concern, there was no fear that Zerubbabel's temple had not been built like Ezekiel described it. They didn't care about that. They were saying, we're in big trouble now. They were just worried about it wasn't as grand as the first. Why was that? I think it's because they knew Ezekiel's temple was meant to be something different for them. It was more of a message instead of an actual blueprint to build. And if they thought it was supposed to be in the future somehow, well, we got to wait for our ancestors 2,000 years or 2,500 years later to build this temple. How did they figure that out from Ezekiel's message? How did they figure that out? So God, through this temple's details, was showing the people his greatness and his perfection with all those measurements that was meant to produce shame, humility, as the people remembered that their sins caused all of this, that they're in the position that they were. And this message from Ezekiel was meant to provide assurance to them beyond some physical building of a restored relationship with God in all of God's holiness. That's what we're reading about. And we can't forget that as we go through this section. Any questions? Comments? You kind of are you getting what you getting the idea? Maybe. Every time lately, so we stream this on YouTube, right? I think somebody's watching that doesn't like what I say about this future temple because they hit that dislike button. We got one dislike just about on a few of the videos, and I know it's from this class. I am so sure it's from this class. And I wish the person, maybe they're watching now, would you just send me an email or something? Just send me an email. Don't just dislike it and say nothing. What's wrong? I could be totally wrong. Dislike it, fine, but send me an email and tell me why, so we can talk about it. Now, if we had like 10,000 people watching, which we don't, I probably wouldn't care. I wouldn't want you to send me an email because I'd never be able to answer all of them. But this is the view that makes the most sense. There's too many things left out for this literal view. Everything else that goes along with this future physical kingdom in Jerusalem. Okay.
Verse 12, I see that as where in 43, this is the law of the temple. The whole area surrounding the mountaintop is most holy. Behold, this is the law of the temple. I mean, really, the Jews would have been keeping God in the holiest of holies, in the one spot, and where only they could go. Well, not specifically all of them, but Gentiles couldn't go.
Yeah, right.
And but it's almost like pointing to the future of even outside.
Okay, so maybe foreshadowing the gospel age when the Messiah would come, where all would be able to be in fellowship with God, kind of thing.
Including all the people that are drawn to the light, which the children of Israel were supposed to be.
It could be, man. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Let's see. Do we want to keep going here? So 13 through, well, we can read about, let's try to get this little section here. So we get the dimensions of the altars. If you want to build one of these in your backyard, there you go. These are the measurements of the altar in cubits. Remember, the cubit is 1 cubit and a handbreadth. It's greater than a cubit. I wonder if that's also adding to the greatness of God and His amazing holiness. Not just a cubit and a handbreadth.
But Chuck, in chapter 42, it shows
other measuring device that they were using, a measuring reed.
Oh,
Reading
read.
a cubit.
Yeah. So the King James says reed, and the a lot of translations say rod.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing, right? So reed,
I'm
rod.
asking you.
Yeah, I think it is. I
Would
think
that
it
be
is.
like the equivalent of a measuring stick?
It's just a measuring stick. Yeah. I mean, obviously, we could just differentiate between a reed, something that grows in out of the swamp, or whatever, and then a rod like a broomstick or something. But I think those are the same thing. He's got something that he can just measure that, and this is how long, and this is, whatever it is. Yeah. But he also had, I think he had something like a plumb line in his hand too. That's how big it is. I tried to put a little person down there so you can kind of see. I was gonna actually like walk them up the steps and stuff for you. It's huge. This thing is huge. I think that's about right. That's my guess.
Now, is that inlaid with gold or is it just wood?
No, it doesn't say. I don't think it says. No, it doesn't. Okay, first let me read this little section. The base 1 cubit high, cubit wide, with a rim all around its edge of one span is the height of the altar. From the base on the ground to the lower edge, 2 cubits. The width of the ledge, 1 cubit. From the smaller ledge to the larger ledge, 4 cubits. And the width of the ledge, 1 cubit. The altar hearth is 4 cubits high with 4 horns extending upward from the hearth. You kind of see the 4 horns there? The altar hearth is 12 cubits long, 12 wide, square at its 4 corners. The ledge, 14 cubits long and 14 wide on its 4 sides, with a rim of half a cubit around it. Its base 1 cubit all around, and its steps face toward the east. Guess where God's coming in? To the temple. So, just to give you an idea, if you notice that little blue line right here, yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that, what that's supposed to be, which doesn't make any sense if it's literal, but I don't know how they would do that today. It's supposed to be a river, but we'll get to that. So there you get that. It's huge. This whole thing is ginormous. And
With all the archaeologists that are running around over there, has anybody ever found any remnants of this?
I don't know.
I mean, surely goodness is.
Of the altar?
It is, huh?
Of the altar?
Well, of the whole thing. Not only the altar, but the most holy place, the
No.
the outer.
No, the
outer-
the Western Wall still stands, right? That's what the Jews, they go and stick their prayers in it. The Western Wall. You ever seen them do that? I think it's called the Wailing Wall. That we have been having a fundamentals class on Monday evening, and I appreciate everybody who shows up for that. You're more than welcome to come to that class on Monday evenings at 7. But so we're talking about very basic things like first principle kind of stuff, and I got to thinking, I wonder if I should preach some of this again, and because there are some, Christians have got to know. There's just some things we just have to know. We have to know these things, and I'm not saying that we have to be able to get up and preach them with all the details or whatnot, but there's just you can really condense a lot of the lessons that get taught up here just down into a few basic things that we ought to be able to recall at a moment's notice and should be able to be coming out in our conversations with people that we have on religious things. And so this is one of these lessons today. This is something that every believer in God, every single Bible reader, every person who wants to go to heaven needs to hear, and they need to got to understand these kinds of things. Some of y'all have heard this before, but I'll let you decide how long ago that was. Now, God is described in the Bible as so many things. Right? We could get this big, long list. But one of those things is a builder. Now, Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 10 tells us that God is both a builder and a maker. Hebrews 3 in verse 4 says, every house is built by someone, but he who built all things is God. Now, the Bible also teaches that Jesus Christ is a builder, and Jesus himself said, Matthew 16:18, upon this rock I will build my church. Does that make Jesus a builder? I think it does, right? In one sense, right? Now, whatever you think is going to build his church, now, however you define that word church, this is how Jesus defined it. It's the Greek word ekklesia. Some of y'all probably heard that before. Just literally, ekklesia means a gathering of citizens called out from their homes into a public place, into some public place. Just literally, it's all it means. And so at least we can know that Jesus was saying here, what he was not saying was that he was going to build a nice-looking building with nice steeple and stained glass windows or whatever it is. He's not going to build an actual building. What did he say he was going to build? It's a people. He was going to build a called-out people. Listen to how Peter words it. Speaking to Christians, Peter says, but you, Christians, are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his marvelous light. That's 1 Peter 2 in verse 9. All right, so individual Christians, those people who have obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ, have had their sins washed away, they are Christians, and those people make up the church that Jesus said he was going to build. Pretty simple, right? And this is what God had designed from before the foundations of the world. Ephesians 3 and verse 11, called the eternal purpose, which he purposed or accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord. So God, through Jesus, he established this assembly, this group of people. He established a church so that all souls who are lost in sin could, if they wanted to, find themselves within that group. They could get in that assembly, in that church, so that they could be saved eternally. Now, part of the design of the church was to prepare the world for the coming of the church. You know, God prepared the world for the coming of Jesus. Right? He came at a very specific time. Galatians 4:4 would call it the fullness of time. Right? So the idea there is that there was just the right time for Jesus to come. Did the same thing with the church. God was going to make absolutely sure that when the time came for all people, all mankind, to be able to enter into this, what we might call a safe haven, right? The church, that everybody was going to know exactly where it was, what it looked like. Because God was aware that sinful man, influenced by our greatest adversary, Satan, right? 1 Peter 5:8, he knew that mankind was going to be very good at making imposters, creating a lot of confusion, where we might go out and we're looking for this safe haven, we're looking for this body of Christ, this church, and we got all of these things that are saying, hey, come over here, here's where safety is. And God was going to make sure that we could kind of distinguish, all right, which one is the real one. And so as time progressed, what God did was he established certain things that could be written down, and they were, and would one day eliminate all that confusion only if people would just stop for a moment and read and think about these things and consider. And so God so did this so that today, in which we have his completed and fully revealed will, what we call the Bible, there should be no confusion as to where or what or who his son, the Savior's church, is. Now, the church is also called the body of Christ. Ephesians 1, verse 22 and 23, and we have to stress that there is only one. And we want to add this, that the church should never be viewed as a substitute for Christ. So I think some hear it and we're talking about the church and how important the church is. And you know that people they say, well, I don't want the church. I want Jesus. And that kind of thing is prevalent out there. I just want Jesus, give me the Christ, and I don't want the church. And so when we're stressing the church, people say, oh, well, they're doing exactly the opposite of what I want. Well, I understand that. I think a denominational view causes us to think that way. But we're not substituting the church for Jesus when we stress the church. We emphasize the church because it is his body and he is the head over it. And so the church and Christ, they go hand in hand. You can't separate them. If you want Christ, you have to take his church. And so God, the master builder, what he did was create this master blueprint, this master pattern in the New Testament, so that every person would be able to pick out that one body, that one church, from among thousands upon thousands upon thousands. Now, some people I know, they want to sincerely argue that there's no pattern, there's no blueprint, there's no pattern in the New Testament. They'll say things like, well, we need to be sticking to principle theology and not pattern theology and all of that, without going into all that. And look, I'm going to say, call it what you want, but it's right there, plain as day, in the Bible. Romans chapter 6 and verse 17. Look at it or listen to what it says. But God be thanked, Paul is writing to these Christians, that though you were slaves of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine to which you were delivered. That word form is the same word, Greek word, that Thomas, remember Apostle Thomas, that Thomas used when he said this. Remember, what do we call Thomas? We call him Doubting Thomas, right? He says, unless I see in his hands the form of the nails. The print, he says, actually, right? It's the same word. Unless I see in his hands the print of the nails and put my finger into the print of the nails, he says, I'm not going to believe. That's John 20, verse 25. It's the same word as form of doctrine. So something made those wounds in Jesus' hands, right? And you really wouldn't have to see the nail that did it to know that it was an actual nail that did it, that caused the form, the print. And if you were to take that same nail that was driven through Jesus' hand and you were to drive it into 100 more hands, guess what? It would cause the same kind of print, same kind of form. Now, do you see how Paul is using the word form in Romans 6 and verse 17? Some might even say, some translations might even use the word pattern. So those Christians, those Roman Christians, when they were lost sinners, they heard the gospel and they obeyed from the heart a form of doctrine, a type, a pattern of teaching that if it were to be followed still today, is going to create the same thing over and over and over and over again. Now, of course, I want to talk to you more about that form of doctrine, that pattern. I'll tell you, it's the gospel of Christ that you see in 1 Corinthians 15, 3 and 4. The death, burial, and resurrection. But first, this lesson. How can we be sure that God works like this? That he works in patterns? How can we be sure that he did this kind of thing with his son's church, using a blueprint of pattern? We can know that he did it because we have evidence that he's done that kind of thing before. He's done it before. Now, again, I want to show this is fundamental Christian Bible teaching. Understanding this, and this is not rocket science, folks. Understanding this opens up so much more learning and so much more understanding. And in my opinion, humble opinion, all of this, what we're going to go through, is it's quite amazing. It's pretty fascinating. So we're going to go back to Noah's Ark. And we're not going all the way back to the very beginning, but you got to admit, it's pretty close. Pretty close to the beginning. We call this the patriarchal age. This is when God would say God spoke to the patriarchs of the family, like Abraham, Noah, spoke to the heads of the households. Now there was a purpose for the ark, and it's pretty simple. It's in Genesis 7:1. But God's purpose of having the ark was to save the righteous. That's it. He was going to destroy the wicked world because of their sins against him, but he was also, on the other hand, going to save the people who loved him and who heeded his voice, who actually cared about God and cared about what he said. Genesis 7:1, the Lord said to Noah, "Come into the ark, you and all your household, because I'm allowing you to come in here. I'm going to say to you, because I, God, have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation." What's the purpose? To save the righteous. So the builder, of course, was Noah, right? Genesis 6:5, the wickedness of man had become so great on the earth, and God was sorry that he ever made man. But Genesis 6:8, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. That tells us that Noah was very different. He was not like everybody else, and so God chose to spare him and his family. And then Noah was put to work. God made him a builder. Genesis 6 and verse 14, make yourself an ark of gopher wood, whatever that wood is, and make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with pitch. And so it was within this vessel that Noah and his family would find safety. Let all of this be sinking in. Try to remember all these things. It was within this place Noah and his family were going to find safety. And it was an ark of God's design. Right? God designed it. He gave Noah the blueprint of sorts. And it was an ark, listen, that separated Noah and his family from everybody else on the earth. They were going to be over here. Well, let's say they were going to be up here. And everybody else is going to be down here. There was some separation there. And God was with Noah in that ark. Had Noah chose not to go in, well, God would have been with him, and he would have perished with the rest of the world. And as Peter tells us, 1 Peter 3 and verse 20, God saved those 8 souls in that ark through water. Now, what about the plan being worked out? So God lays out this very specific plan of the building of the ark, and all these plans for who would go in and the type and number of animals and all of that stuff. But what we don't read is where God ever gave Noah the right to change what he had said. And mankind has never been afforded that right to change what God has said. And one reason is because, well, we don't know what God knows. God knows far better than we do, and what we have to do is trust that God knows better than me. So the Bible simply states, Noah did. Thus Noah did. According to all that God commanded him, so he did. Genesis 6, verse 22. So there was no questioning God's plans. There was no, God, I think we could do with a little bit more footage or cubage on this side of the ark. God, I have an improved design. I've been working on it all night. I want you to check this out. There was none of that. That never happened. And that is because, as the Hebrew writer tells us, by faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household. That's Hebrews 11 and verse 7. Do you think that is what people are missing today? Godly fear? I don't think a lot of people are moved with godly fear today. If they did, they'd be doing a whole lot more. But if you say, all right, well, those people, they don't have godly fear. That has nothing to do with them. But that's not me. I do fear God. I do love God. I respect his way. I believe that he exists. All right, so if that's you, then that's great, because you're in good company. And we can talk more about that. That's what does it mean to be godly fear. But you're going to have to sit down with me and open the Bible if you want to talk about it more. So let's review. Remember the purpose of the ark, the builder of the ark, and the plan that was carried out, okay? Going on to the tabernacle. We're talking about the temple in Ezekiel right now in Bible class. This is the tabernacle that came far before the temple that Solomon would have built. This was built in the wilderness, and so by this time in history, in Bible history, God has chosen Israel. He's chosen a people. He's called them out, right? He's given them a law to live by, and in that law included this tabernacle. Now, what was the purpose? Well, a lot of details were given, but the purpose was very, very simple. God said, I want you to build this tabernacle, and I want you to worship this tabernacle so that I will be with you. God wanted to be with his people, and he chose this tabernacle to do that through. Exodus 25 and verse 8, and let them make me a sanctuary, a tabernacle, that I may dwell among them. That word dwell is the same root word for tabernacle, so we could say that God wanted to tabernacle with people. That sounds kind of funny, doesn't it? God wanted to tabernacle among Israel. Remember that. The builder, of course, was Moses. Now we would say, well, the Israelites did the building. No, Moses did the leading. We could say Moses was the builder. It was given to Moses. The pattern was Exodus 25, verse 9. According to all that I show you, that is the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, just so you shall make it. So he says to Moses, God says, now look, Moses, I'm going to tell you exactly what to build. I'm going to tell you exactly how to build it. Now you remember, I'm God now. So you can trust that I know what I'm doing. So don't think that you know better and go about changing that pattern. Here's the plan. Exodus 25 through 27. You can read through those 3 chapters there where God lays out the plans for the building of it and all the pieces of furniture that would go inside of it, amazingly detailed, so much so that people have actually built replicas of the tabernacle, whether they're out of Legos or whether they actually would try to build it somewhere. I'll show you a picture of that in just a little bit here. And how did they do it? They just followed the blueprint that was in the Bible. And God also gave them plans on how to use the things that were in the tabernacle. Well, what kind of oil were they supposed to use in the lampstand? God told them. What kind of incense that they needed to burn at the altars? It's a very specific kind of. God told them how to do that. What kind of animals to offer? Now, you can't just offer anything. You can't offer squirrels and possums. That wouldn't have worked. Who was allowed where in the tabernacle? Who was allowed to serve in the tabernacle in these areas? And on and on and on and on and on it goes. Very detailed. And we find that just like as with Noah, he never gave Moses or the Israelites the right to deviate from the plan. Again, Exodus 25, verse 40. See to it that you make them according to the pattern which was shown you on the mountain. And the Hebrew writer in the New Testament will say the very same thing. He's using the scripture to make a point. He says, as Moses was divinely instructed when he was about to make the tabernacle, for he said, for God told Moses, see that you make all things according to the pattern which is shown you on the mountain. Hebrews 8, verse 5. All right. So remember these. The purpose of the tabernacle was so that God could dwell among his people. Moses received the pattern. He led in the building of the tabernacle, and that plan, that pattern, it was carried out not to be changed, nor was it to be strayed from in any way. Easy. We got this. Easy. Now we move on to what we would say the days that we are living in now, which we could call them the last days, and that's fine. That's pretty biblical because these are we're living in the only days that will ever be. There's not going to be another age coming. This is it. In this church age, the gospel age, and the messianic age, whatever you want to call it, this is where we find the church. This is another build we're going to look at now. So we got the ark at the tabernacle. Now we're looking at this build. What was the purpose of the church? It's twofold. Number one, it was to hold the righteous, to hold the saved. Acts 2 and verse 47, and the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. The saved were put inside of the church by the Lord himself. Now, let me ask you, does that fit the pattern that we saw in the purpose of Noah's ark? To save the righteous? Yeah, they match. The second purpose of the church was for God to tabernacle among his people, to dwell among his people. Paul tells the church in 1 Corinthians 3 and verse 16, he says, do you not know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? He's talking about the church as a whole. Okay, so does that fit the pattern that we saw in the purpose of the tabernacle? For God to dwell among his people. Yeah, that matches. I want you to see, can you see how we say God never changes, right? God never changes, and that's true. But can you see how the principles and nature of God never change? His nature, who he is, how great he is, and good he is, and benevolent, loving, and all of that. How his nature never changed, but his ways and his methods do change. He's always cared about saving the righteous, about those who obey him. He's always wanted to dwell among his people, but you see how he did it in different ways? God never changes, but his methods do. Noah was not obligated to. When Noah gets to what we call the pearly gates of heaven, don't be shocked when you don't see actual pearly gates, but when Noah gets to heaven, is he going to hear from God, you didn't worship at the tabernacle like you were supposed to? No, Noah wasn't obligated to do that. Will Moses get and be stopped at the gates of heaven and say, Moses, you didn't believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ? No, Moses was never commanded to do that, was he? Abraham never commanded to do that, but we are. I just want you to get different ages, different laws, but the same wonderful God over all of them. I cannot tell you how important that is to wrap your brain around. You need to get that as you read through the Bible. Things are going to make a whole lot more sense. What about the builder of this church? Well, we know it's Jesus Christ, right? So Matthew 16:18 again, upon hearing Peter's wonderful confession that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, Jesus says, and I also say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. Can you see that Noah and Moses typified the coming of Christ? All three were given a divine pattern, a heavenly blueprint, to build the design that God had given them. And all three of them did exactly according to the plan. Did Jesus do everything that God wanted him to do? Jesus said, but that the world may know that I love the Father, as the Father gave me commandment, so I do. Sounds a lot like, thus Noah did. Right? That's John 14:31. All right. Is everything fitting perfectly so far? Have I missed something? You can tell me right now. I don't care. Okay. It's okay. We can do that. What about the plan itself for the church? Well, that would take another long time. But the plan itself included everything from when and where the church would be established, Jerusalem, to the work of the church, the worship by the church, the membership of the church. In other words, what does a person need to do to get into the body of Christ? What does a person need to do to be saved? Noah couldn't change the plans for the ark. Gopher wood, right? What if he wanted to use oak wood? Or somebody saying, well, maybe his hammer was made of oak wood. Come on, stop that. Those use gopher wood. Couldn't use any other wood. Or he could have made it a longer length, could he? Because that would have essentially been telling God, your design is not good enough. And we know better than that. Moses had no reason to alter the tabernacle's blueprint. Why would he? Or change the avenues of worship that God had prescribed? No, God, we need 30 feast days instead of the ones you've given us. He couldn't have done that. Everything that Jesus did too. So Noah did it. Moses did it. Everything that Jesus did pleased the Father. John 8 verse 29. And what Jesus did was build and establish his church exactly how God wanted it. Exactly how God had always planned it to be from the very beginning. If you want to know what the ark may have looked like, we can take the Bible, we can follow the pattern, and hey, we can go build one. People have actually done that. If you want to know what the tabernacle looked like, and what all the items inside were like, and follow the pattern that's given in the Bible. People have done that. There's a real live replica of it. Got even a couple of animals there, whatever those are. People have done it out of Legos. Probably don't get on the game, get on the little Minecraft game and build all the temple, do it all, spec it out all right. If you want to know what the church that belongs to Christ looks like today, then you do the same thing. You open up your New Testament and you follow the blueprint. You follow the pattern, the form of doctrine that was once and for all delivered to the saints. Jude 1 and verse 3. So that same church, the same church, is still in existence today. And all one has to do is compare patterns to be sure that they have found the right one. If I handed you my car keys, told you to go start up my car, and that's all I said. Here's my keys, go start it up, and my little thing is broken on my thing, right? You can't just go around beeping it because it's broken. It don't work. And I say, look, it's somewhere out there. And not this parking lot. Let's say we're in Walmart. Let's say we're at Disney World. Somewhere out there. Can you go pull the car around? You never find, you would give up. You say, no, thank you. I don't even care to look for that thing. But if I told you it's old and it's ugly, it's black, it's dirty, it's a Ford, it's an Explorer, here's the license plate number, it's got a dent in one of the sides of it, I give you even the VIN number, you think you find it then? You can narrow it down pretty quickly. Take your New Testament. If a church, a people, work in worship, and they uphold the same truths as the church of the New Testament did, then guess what? You've got the right one. Oh, we can't, well, but we can't be judged. Yes, you're allowed to make those judgments. Test all things, hold fast that which is good. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. But I'm telling you, if a church, a people, if they have and they follow a different blueprint, a different pattern, different teaching, all different things, then you have found somebody's church. But it cannot be Jesus Christ. And he told us, every plant which my heavenly Father has not planted will be uprooted. Matthew 15 and verse 13. You know, it is hard to ignore the pattern in the Bible, in his word. He did that for a reason. He made it very simple for us to have absolute confidence about our salvation. We don't have to wonder whether we've done it right or not. Whether I'm saved or whether I'm lost, all you need to do is follow the pattern. Now, when you open this is the last thing, open the book of Acts. You read through Acts. Acts records the church's beginning. And what you see people doing there, becoming Christians, how they became Christians, is exactly what you and I need to do today. If not, why not? Why isn't that the case? What you saw people doing, they would hear preaching. Somebody brought them the message. They believed the message. They believed in Jesus. The message told them to repent of their sins, and that's what they did. The message told them to confess. Because all these things is what Jesus taught. Confess Christ before others. They did that. And the message that they heard, the gospel, said to be baptized for the remission of their sins. And that's what they did. And folks, this is what we need to do. Right? Or am I wrong? If I'm wrong, don't just dislike the video. What I was talking about earlier. Don't just say, I want to go to heaven. And if you can help me get there, then please do so. I don't want to be wrong. I just want to be right. And so it's upon both of us to get together and look at these things and see. Heaven's, folks, we're talking about our souls, and heaven is going to be way too good for us to miss. If you need to obey the gospel today, if you want to learn more about some of these things, study about these things, then let us know. Or just start opening up your Bible and read it for yourself. I'd be happy to open the Bible with you, but there might be some who have obeyed the gospel, but are living in sin. There's some sin in your life, and you need to take care of it. God provided a way for that. That's why his son died on the cross. And he's waiting for you with open arms to bring you back home. It might be that you just need prayers from this congregation, and this is a group of people who like to pray, love to pray, and love to pray for other people. And so if we can help you in that, then we certainly will. But whatever you might need, you can come forward now or just see us before you leave, but we want to help you, get you in the right place. So let's grab our songbooks and stand and sing together.
There's a stranger at the door.